Well, hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Movie Burner podcast, brought to you by Movie Burner Entertainment, where we discuss the latest news, views and reviews on the latest in the entertainment world. What's up first, John?
Murder on the Orient Express has released on Friday over here. It's set to release next week in the US. Of course, the new Kenneth Branagh directed film adapted on the famous Agatha Christie crime mystery novel. Been getting a mixed critical response really from all the various different outlets. I'm certainly looking forward to it. It has a great cast, but what's your thoughts on it, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm liking the tone of this film, John. I don't think we've got enough murder mystery films out there. There's not been that many over the last few years, but this trailer dropped back in June. I was very surprised when I did a wee bit of research on the trailer. I remember when it did come out, not realising it was still a few months down the line before the film's actual release. Big gap between June and now, right enough, but second trailer dropped just over 6 weeks ago. A lot more information in the second film, a lot more scenes, a lot more dialogue, but it's looking a good film as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the first thing that really struck me was the cast. Utterly incredible, the cast. I think we touched upon it before we started recording. That I've not seen the original 70s film, but you says that was much the same. It had a great cast for the time.
Yeah, I mean, just looking back at the 1974 version of this Agatha Christie novel, this film was directed by Sidney Lumet, and it starred Albert Finney, Lauren Bacall, Martin Balsam, Ingrid Bergman, Sean Connery, John Gielgud, Michael York, Vanessa Redgrave. I could go on. What a cast, and the lineup in this new version of the film is just as impressive.
Yeah, the main one obviously being Kenneth Branagh himself. He's directing and starring as the lead, Hercule Poirot, the famous detective from the novel. I haven't read it, I'm not going to lie, but he looks an intriguing character, to say the least. I know there's been a lot of flack dished his way about both his Belgian accent and his facial hair, but I've just read today actually that Christie herself described his facial hair as being like a silvery feathered boa on his upper lip. So to me, that kind of matches the description of Mr. Branagh's facial hair, so I don't find any issue with that. Well, I'm a chap that likes to sport a beard myself, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. Going down the list, I see Daisy Ridley, obviously of Star Wars fame. She looks absolutely incredible in this film. She's obviously good at doing the whole posh English accent as we already know. Yeah. Playing Governess Mary Debenham. She looks good. I've seen a couple of scenes before alongside Branagh himself. We've got Johnny Depp playing Samuel Ratchet, apparently a weasel of a gangster. I think he's the chap that actually gets killed on the train, although that's not been confirmed. Yeah. He looked a little bit worse for wear at the premiere the other night, so hopefully that's not an indication of how his performance went. Obviously you were talking about Olivia Colman as well, weren't you?
Yeah, great actress who's obviously appearing in Broadchurch at the moment with David Tennant. Very versatile actress. She can do drama, she can do comedy, as we've saw her appearance in Hot Fuzz. It's one of those memorable characters. Terrific performance in that as well. Yeah, I mean, great cast as you said, John. Penelope Cruz in there as well. Willem Dafoe, a big fan of him, fantastic actor.
Yeah, and then you've got Judi Dench and Josh Gad, of course. Judi Dench, I'm quite concerned by what I read about her, that she's only really got 3 lines of meaningful dialogue, and that kind of maybe goes into what I'm going to want to discuss next about this film. I'm quite concerned that with the array of talent they've got, just how Branagh is going to really go about fitting them all in, getting equal screen time and really developing the characters. It'll be interesting to see if he manages to accomplish this or not, but
yeah,
it's quite a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that myself. The key to a film with a big cast of this is obviously to have good balance within your actors and your characters. And as you said, if you suggest that Judi Dench is very limited, I'm very surprised at that. I didn't know that.
In terms of the actual trailers, I've loved the visuals in this film. And I think we spoke again before we started recording about it being shot on 65mm film. So he's went down the classic route here, and there seems to be several scenic wide shots which caught my eye, especially with the train passing through the landscape. I also like the way they're filming through the window. This is something I actually like in films. I remember they've done it in Harry Potter, and recently in Trainspotting 2 they utilised like a camera angle that went through a corner window of the flat, and it's really nice. It adds something to the film for me aesthetically.
Yeah, just going back to the way this film shot, I think Kenneth Branagh was a big fan of Quentin Tarantino's Hateful Eight. The way that was shot, I did a movie review on this earlier on in the year, and it was one of the things that was a standout, those wide shots and the process of his filming technique as well. And I did read that Kenneth Branagh took inspiration from that film.
Yeah, I've not seen many of his films, I've got to be honest with you. I actually wasn't aware that he'd directed 4, But obviously I've seen 4, I've seen Cinderella, as I spoke about last week, I don't know how, and I've seen Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It was, I think, an early 90s film. That was quite a good film. So he's not got an array of films that I would say are big hitting films, but he certainly across the board he seems to direct fairly good films, generally speaking. So the jury's certainly out for this one, but it looks decent enough. And as I said to you, Stephen, I'm a fan of the mystery crime genre, massive fan of Columbo. I never read the book, as I says, I never watched the original film, so this may be the film for me. I think much of the criticism that's came towards this film, certainly from what I've read anyway, is from people comparing it to the original film and really the book itself. So with me not being fans of it or having seen it, then this may be the film for me.
It's a very easy thing to do when you're doing a remake, that you will get an element of fan base that will not approve of it or whatever. The other thing is that people do regard the murder mystery genre very outdated these days, which is a shame. But as we said, this movie came out here in the UK on the 3rd of November, and it's coming out this Friday in the USA, and we're certainly looking forward to it. And we're just now moving on to the next film that's been out for a wee while here in the UK, The Death of Stalin.
Yeah, I've not actually had a chance to go and see this one yet, but in terms of what I've seen, I'm quite excited. I think I actually will go and give it a watch pretty soon. I love the director, obviously Armando Iannucci. He's from Glasgow, worked extensively with Steve Coogan throughout the whole Alan Partridge thing, all the various facets or forms that character took. He's worked with Peter Capaldi, so he's well familiar with that whole genre, and I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, this film's based on a French graphic novel, and from what I've seen from the trailer, John, both trailers that is, it's certainly gone down the route of, in tone and political satire, would be The Thick of It, or the spin-off movie of that, In the Loop. It's certainly gone down that road more than it is of Partridge. And I think Armando Iannucci wrote this with David Schneider, who was Tony Hare's, by the way, and Alan Partridge. He was the BBC producer at the time. But Alan Partridge made him smell his cheese, as you recall. But I mean, the tone of it, it's very dark theme to it, and it might not be for everyone. It's certainly my favourite genre, and there is some violent and gruesome scenes apparently in the film. But the tone of the film is black comedy.
Yeah, I think with the involvement of Schneider and Iannucci, it's going to be well written, if nothing else. The dialogue will be good. And what I find interesting is they're just not even trying to pretend that it's going to be Russian accents or even foreign language film. I like that. Personally, if a film is set in another country, if they're not going to go the foreign language route, I'd prefer them to keep the characters, or the actors, natural accents and the way they speak, and just do the whole film in English. So I like the way they're going down that route, especially with Jason Isaacs. He's got a really rough Yorkshire accent, kind of belying his role as a Russian general. But some of the lines he had in the 2 trailers are really up there as my favourites. Things like, I took Germany, I think I can take a flesh lump in a waistcoat. I thought that was a nice touch. Again, the cast, I love the cast in this again. Yes, as I said, Jason Isaacs, I've seen him in quite a few films. He's a very versatile, great actor. Yeah. Probably most prominent role for me was as Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter franchise. Utterly brilliant in that. Andrea Riseborough as Svetlana Stalin, again, seen her in quite a few films. Oblivion and Nocturnal Animals, very talented actress. Olga Kurylenko also starred in Oblivion. She was in Perfect Day and of course James Bond. So they've got an array of good talent on here, and of course Steve Buscemi as well.
I didn't recognise Buscemi in the trailer, I've got to be honest. It wasn't until he actually spoke that I picked out that, well, that's Buscemi. But yeah, I mean, Andrea Riseborough and is it Rupert Friend are playing Stalin's children in this film, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the legendary Michael Palin in there. Don't know how much screen time Michael Palin's going to have, but him and Paddy Considine, big fan of both of them.
I think with Palin being in there, I think that kind of speaks volumes for the route they're going to go down with the comedy. Obviously he's famed for his satirical comedy in Monty Python, so yeah, it should be interesting. In terms of the time setting, I love the period accurate costume designs and sets. It all looks perfect. It looks like it's taking place in Russia in the 1950s. Of course, he was, let's not make any pretense, Joseph Stalin wasn't a good man. He killed a lot of people. He was a bit of a divisive figure in Russia at that time. And I don't think I quite agree with the quote they say at the beginning of one of the trailers where it says he was feared by the majority of the population. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I don't think that's quite accurate, but Yeah, I'm interested. I like the way they're going with the look, with the costume designs, and as I says, the dialect being in English. If you're going to do it, then that's the way to go.
Yeah, this trailer dropped on the 11th of August, a few months ago now. The movie was released here in the UK on the 20th of October. And released on the 8th of September in Canada at the Toronto International Film Festival. The movie burners will be doing a review on this somewhere down the line. Certainly looking forward to it, John. Armando Iannucci's work, and been a big fan of his for the last 25 years, right back from when he was writing the Day-to-Day with Steve Coogan. Yeah. And you can see elements of that production from 1994 carrying on into the thick of it in the loop. And now this film.
Yeah, I think with the thick of it, that gives a little hint of what you're going to get in this film. It's very political, very satirical, and there's going to be laughs in there despite it being quite dark. I liked what I read where one of the reviewers actually says the last 10-15 minutes takes a complete different direction in tone, goes much darker, kind of kicks off the shackles with the whole comedy side of things, and really gives an insight into what was at stake.
Yeah, and anyone that follows us on Twitter, at our website, just look out for our movie review coming up on the Death of Stalin. Now we're moving on to our next topic, which is a little segment about Star Wars, which we just simply called Star Wars News. And the reason for this is we don't normally do this, is because there has been a droplets of information over the last 7 days in regards to the Han Solo movie. Obviously the TV spot trailer for The Last Jedi, which I think was shown during one of the World Series matches on Wednesday the 1st of November. And obviously a big statement from Kathleen Kennedy, John.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we'll touch upon the news about Han Solo, or So, A Star Wars Story as it's now called. It's been reported in the press that there's been up to 80% of it reshot, which is quite extensive. There has been people come out and refuted those claims, but I think with obviously Ron Howard now having filmed it for more time than I think Lord and Miller had, it's pretty clear there's been very extensive reshooting happened on this film, but that's not surprising to me really, with obviously the clash in creative visions with the film. You've heard and read obviously from Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm that they, I think, originally saw this as being a western genre type film, and what we've heard from Lord and Miller's escapades is that they were kind of taking it down a more comedic route with lots of improvised scenes and stuff, so yeah, it doesn't surprise me, the news on the reshoots.
Yeah, I mean, this will be Lawrence Kasdan's fourth and final time working on the film franchise, which kind of sad to read that. I think he's played a big part in the Star Wars universe over the last 40 years. Obviously the creative differences weren't just with Kathleen Kennedy with Lord and Miller, it was obviously with the co-writer Lawrence Kasdan as well. And I've got to say, I'm not surprised about the extensive percentage of what you quoted there in the reshoots. After appointing Ron Howard to replace Lord and Miller. In hindsight, that is. And what better way than to bring in an experienced director in the calibre of Ron Howard.
Yeah, and I think what you touched upon with Lawrence Kasdan being also the writer, that's why I'm not really concerned about the reshoots and the extensive nature of them. With Ron Howard coming, I think it's pretty clear that Lawrence Kasdan is probably directing this film, and he's kind of doing it under the pretense of Ron Howard directing it. Those two together, I don't think there's a better man to really tell a story of Han Solo than Kasdan. He obviously knows the character inside out, he knows the dialogue inside out, so if anybody's going to be in a position to really say that's not right for the character, that's not right for the film going forward, then it's going to be him. And obviously, as you said, Ron Howard, extremely experienced director, steadied the ship, and I really like what he's been doing with the little tidbits and photos he's been releasing on social media. And this is kind of it's got my anticipation raised a little bit for the film. I've got to be honest, it wasn't one I wanted to see. I'm always liked the mystery of Han Solo's character, this backstory. Much like Yoda, I don't think you have to tell his story. I thought that was told in the original trilogy and also the first part of the sequel trilogy, so it wasn't a film I was over the moon to seek and release, but I'll certainly give it a shot with it being Star Wars. And
I think we'll touch on Kathleen Kennedy's comments in a wee moment here, but I mean, as you said, when Han Solo film, the project was announced, wasn't exactly over the moon about it, but now knowing this news that's came from Kathleen Kennedy, you can now look at the bigger picture, which we'll touch on in a wee moment. But going back to Han Solo, this is still scheduled for May release, John, May 2018, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And that's something, again, I'm slightly disappointed with. I prefer the December release myself. I think Lucasfilm and Disney should really be making that a Star Wars slot.
It's certainly been a tradition for us anyway, you know, certainly the movie burners. The last 3 Christmases, including this Christmas coming up, where we will be going to see The Last Jedi, it certainly became a wee tradition for ourselves. Traditionally, the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy were May releases, but when The Force Awakens was released in December 2015, I just felt it was the right time to make that Star Wars time, you know.
Especially when they've not got much competition in that sort of a time slot as well. There's not many films get released there. A lot of rival studios are scared to really take on the Star Wars brand, so I'm surprised that they're moving it back to May.
There is one reason that kind of popped into my head there, and that is because of Disney's Mary Poppins release. It's coming out December 2018, and from a studio's point of view, it probably doesn't make sense that you're going to shoot one of your own films down as far as box office goes if you're releasing another.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Disney have earned the right to make the decisions. They've earned a lot of money over the last few years, so I'm not going to criticise their decisions. They know what they're doing, but from my personal stance, I would have preferred December, but as you say, with Mary Poppins, it's an understandable decision. But just touching on the cast briefly, I'm not going to get into it in any great detail, but I don't think we spoke about it, I love the casting of Woody Harrelson. I'm very intrigued to see his role as a mentor. I've heard it described. I'm certainly excited to see his role. Donald Glover, I think he is a great actor, looks the part, and I think he'll certainly do Billy D. Williams and Lando, this character, proud. Emilia Clarke, not overly impressed with her casting. I do like her in Game of Thrones as Daenerys, but she's not really impressed me in her other performances to date. Alden Ehrenreich, to my mind, I've not seen any of his films, so I can't comment from an acting standpoint, but to me he's just too short. Doesn't look an awful lot like Harrison Ford, and it's not a big enough time gap between that and the original trilogy, so that's a slight concern. I'm a little bit worried about him, but he may prove me wrong. Yeah,
I mean, there was a few pictures going back a few months ago where Billy D. Williams was photographed with Donald Glover. I don't want to look too much into that photograph, but it does look like they had in-depth talks about the character. I'm just wondering if possibly that we're going to see Billy D. Williams as Lando perhaps at the beginning of the movie, and the reason I'm saying this is because I would love to see this, John, where Billy D. Williams as Lando is attending Han Solo's funeral, which would be quite a clever trick for Lucasfilm to integrate into The Last Jedi, where we're certainly going to see something as testament to the character of Han Solo, and it would be interesting to see perhaps at the beginning of the Han Solo movie we see Billy D. Williams looking back on his memories, and then we go back 30-40 years, and that's where the film begins. It'd be quite an interesting sort of angle to take the film.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I've never actually thought of that. I was incredibly disappointed that the Lando character didn't make an appearance in the Force Awakens, and there certainly doesn't seem to be any news of him making an appearance in The Last Jedi either, so I find that quite disappointing. I do understand Billy D. Williams isn't the most mobile these days. He has get quite a bit older than obviously the 1980s when he was doing it in his prime, but yeah, I find that interesting with the whole sort of a Bilbo Baggins Hobbit looking back. That's an interesting way of maybe doing things.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting and exciting times for Lucasfilm and Disney, and we're now going to talk about that little trailer that dropped last Wednesday, John, on the 1st of November. During a World Series game, which over here, it's baseball to us, but it's a Last Jedi trailer TV spot named Darkness Rises.
Yeah, I wasn't watching the World Series because my team's not in it. The Sox are rubbish. But yeah, the trailer, excellent trailer, incredible trailer, lots of new shots. Probably better than the second main trailer, to be honest, I felt. Well, maybe I'm talking nonsense here, to be fair, but yeah, just seeing Luke and the Falcon again, that was goosebumps right away. I thought that was incredible. It's probably the first time I've seen him in that particular set on film for about 40 years.
Where do you think that takes place in the film, John? Just obviously speculating.
I think it's at the beginning. I think at the beginning, obviously the first shot is of the Falcon sitting on Act 2 in the rain, so I think it's probably at the beginning. He goes down not long after meeting Rey at the end of The Force Awakens and goes down and has a little look at the Falcon. Also, with the news of Han Solo's death, he's probably purely for nostalgia want to go and have a little look about. But it was really nice seeing him in it again. I
mean, I remember last week when I saw this trailer first time, the first thing that sprung into my head was this is probably the first time on film. I'm not talking about any canon books or anything like that, novels, but this is probably the first time that Luke Skywalker has been on that ship since The Empire Strikes Back, when Leia and Lando brought him back from Cloud City.
And in terms of the other visuals, I see they're continuing the whole red theme again with the Snoke throne room shot. I thought that was really striking, loved it. And also you get a little glimpse of General Hux, who's not made an appearance in any of the trailers, so it's nice to know he's still alive after his cowardly little escape at the end of Force Awakens. Great character though, so I'm pleased to see him. Also again, we've seen the Falcon going through the whole underground scene, and then it's smashing out to the surface, so we now know that's on Crate as well. I found it interesting that when I read about Crate, they says there wasn't going to be a lot of screen time there. It was going to be quite intense, but there wasn't going to be a lot of screen time, so that's probably showing that although they've released 2 main trailers now in a short TV spot, that most of this action's probably taking place in like a condensed part of the film. We're not getting to see much of a story, which I do like. And the final shot of Rey in the rain, I think we spoke about this, didn't we, before we went on? You've got a little theory about that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you know, the end scene suggests a face-off between Luke and Rey. Whether or not this is a misdirection, very much the same as the main trailer, which was released last month, could be a misdirection. You know, and some fans are concerned that Lucasfilm are clipping the wings off Luke Skywalker's character, filling him with fear, etc. You know, Mark Hamill did show his concern. I think it was round about
Celebration.
Celebration. You know, he did backtrack a little, but I think he probably was pulled into Kathleen Kennedy's office, you know, to retract his statements. But there does seem to be a bit of concern amongst Star Wars fans in regards to the way his character has been portrayed in this new film, compared to certainly a far cry from the legend, or also known as the expanded universe character.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very disappointed with The Force. That was one of my main disappointments with The Force Awakens, I should say. Luke's role in it, or lack of role. I thought it was a bit of a cop-out by J.J. Abrams. I think I read that, off the record of course, it wasn't official that he came out and says this, that he was overawed by the character, and they thought that he would overpower much of the other new characters introduced, so he kind of left it to the next director, also Rian Johnson, to deal with that problem. So that was disappointing. I do echo what you're saying about them maybe neutering the character of Luke a little bit, and it's a concern. But the way I read it, falling into the water, Rey, in the last trailer, it's possible that, again, as I touched upon when we last discussed this, that this might be something to do with that rumour that was going around from, I think, Making Star Wars, who are usually on the money, of a confrontation between the Knights of Ren, Luke and Rey. And obviously Rey ends up in the water, and Luke then wipes the floor with the Knights of Ren, so I'm hoping that it's going to be that, and it's not a face-off between Rey and Luke. Well, that would be cool as well, but I do hope that they don't neuter the character of Luke anymore. I want to see him ignite the lightsaber. I want to see him fighting and showing his force ability.
Yeah, I mean, The Last Jedi will be the final Star Wars film to star Carrie Fisher, as we know, who died in December 2016, a few months after filming The Last Jedi wrapped up. This new trailer comes just 6 weeks before the film is scheduled to hit theatres on December 15th. I'm certainly looking forward to it, John. It's going to be probably the biggest film of the year, and
yeah, certainly my most anticipated release of the year to date. I think the next thing we were going to talk about was Kathleen Kennedy's announcement that Disney and Lucasfilm have a 10-year plan.
Yeah, I'll just quote what the statement was from Kathleen Kennedy midweek here in the UK. She said, "We're sitting down now, we're talking about the next 10 years of Star Wars stories, and we're looking at narratively where they might go. Future stories beyond Episode 9 with these new characters, Rey, Poe, Finn, BB-8, but we're also looking at working with people that are interested in coming into the Star Wars world and taking us to places that we haven't been yet. And that's exciting because it's a vast galaxy far, far away," said Kennedy on the latest episode of the Star Wars show. "The possibilities are endless."
Yeah, I find that very interesting. I'm obviously incredibly pleased as a Star Wars fan. I've heard a lot of people saying that I don't really want a Star Wars film every year because, you know, we might get viewer fatigue and might end up with the comic book films, but, you know, I don't agree at all. I would take 2 Star Wars films a year if they were willing to do it. And I find it interesting, just the comment he says about taking these new characters beyond Episode 9. She doesn't mention Luke, Chewbacca or any of the original cast, so maybe that's an indicator of their fate in the sequel trilogy, that they're not going to make it beyond. I was actually going to discuss this with you. What do you think? They're going to do a break after the current sequel trilogy?
Yeah, I think after Episode 9, I think there might be a break. Well, that'll be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows. I mean, there was a gap, what was it, 10 years between Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and The Force Awakens, which came out 10 years, obviously, in 2015. I do think they will take a break after that, because I think they will concentrate on these anthology films, standalone films, whatever you want to call them. And I think they will invest time in characters that we know and love. Boba Fett's, the Obi-Wan Kenobi's, Yoda, and even, you know, there has been talk about a Jabba the Hutt film.
I'd be interested in every one of them. I was just going to touch upon that. What I would like to see them maybe visiting going forward with the standalone films, I would love to see a Hutt film, maybe incorporating the various different bounty hunters in a criminal underworld type thing, where it could maybe be in the similar vein to a Godfather film. That would be very interesting to me, and it would maybe get the whole Boba Fett thing out of the way without them really giving him his own film. I don't think that character as a single entity deserves a film on his own. I don't think he's merited it. I'm sure he looked cool in little bits and bobs in the original trilogy, but as a character I don't think he had enough substance to him to really merit.
I think that's one of the reasons that the character has become such a cult figure. Similar to what you were saying about Han Solo, sometimes too much information on a character kind of taints the myth around them, and certainly in the case of Boba Fett, I totally agree.
And obviously they've announced that there is an Obi-Wan standalone in the works. If, as indeed you think, they're going to take a break, I do wonder whether they'll maybe do a trilogy or even a duology with Obi-Wan as a character. They've also not announced whether Ewan McGregor's reprising his role as Obi-Wan yet. I certainly hope that happens. I know Disney and Lucasfilm are notorious for the kind of a compartmentalised way in which they release news of obviously the late announcement of Alden Ehrenreich when everyone knew he was going to be Han Solo at Celebration a couple of years ago. Perfectly epitomised that. But they shouldn't even be putting a casting call out for the Obi-Wan character. That should be Ewan McGregor's to refuse, and I don't think he's going to. He's certainly in any interviews I've seen him with showed his interest and love of the franchise. So I can't wait for the Obi-Wan film to come, certainly more than the Han Solo. As I says, I'll watch Solo, A Star Wars Story, but Obi-Wan, I'm certainly more interested in seeing him, what he's been getting up to.
Do you think any of these anthology movies, John, might develop into trilogies of their own?
Yes, as I says, that's what I certainly hope. I hope perhaps to maybe start this with an Obi-Wan film, and maybe even touching upon what you were saying with Luke and him maybe being neutered with the whole EU thing. I did like what they done with the Luke character in those early EU books. Obviously Timothy Zane's Thrawn trilogy was the best. I've read a lot of expanded universe books, and I have to say 99% of them were absolute rubbish, but Timothy Zane's Thrawn trilogy spawned a couple of great characters that maybe pose a couple of interesting options for them going forward for standalones. Perhaps a Thrawn trilogy, maybe even a Mara Jade. They might introduce her. They were really the only two characters I thought that would make an appearance in a film, but they could certainly incorporate a Mara Jade character within a Luke standalone, maybe perhaps led by Sebastian Stan going forward, and that could be a duology or a trilogy. So yeah, I certainly think they could. I mean,
the thing about the Obi-Wan, the possibility of a trilogy, it would have to be a very condensed story in between episode 3 and episode 4. As we know and assume, he's been spending most of that time on Tatooine watching over a very young Luke Skywalker, but it'd be interesting to see him take off every now and again to other planets and other adventures, but we'll have to see, you know. And the prospect of being taken to these places we haven't been yet will surely sound appealing to the fans who want to see the franchise venturing out beyond the already established canon.
Yeah, and I think a Thrawn standalone film would perfectly touch upon all these new locations. His character and his species of alien also came from the unknown regions in the Star Wars galaxy, so perhaps, I know they've introduced them to Rebels, so they've already introduced the character to canon. So if they want to go down that road and give him a standalone, then he's certainly an interesting enough character with enough meat in the bones to do so. So I hope if they do go down the road of introducing him, that we do get to visit new worlds, because obviously that's been a criticism of Star Wars over the years. We visit the same worlds, Tatooine, Mustafar. So yeah, I mean, I hope they do. And I'm just touching upon that slightly more with new worlds and stuff. I would love to see them doing an Old Republic film. It's obviously set thousands of years prior to the original trilogy. It might not go over well with casual viewers, but it's certainly a lore and a part of the history that I would love to see. There's some great Sith characters in there, such as Raven, who I believe has already been added to the new canon, so it's certainly something they're looking at, and I hope they do go to the Old Republic as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you've got to you've got to take into consideration your casual Star Wars fans, the ones that perhaps just watch the movies, they don't watch the animated series, they don't read the novels, etc. And I think they are playing it safe at the moment, with the first anthology film, standalone film, being set just before A New Hope, Episode 4, A New Hope, and the next one by a well-loved character. I think the next one will be Obi-Wan, as we spoke of, and it's really just they are playing it safe at the moment. It's going to be very interesting as well. Lucasfilm over the last year or so have burnt their fingers as far as directors have gone. Firstly with Lord and Miller on the Solo project, and then with Colin Trevorrow on Episode 9, who was replaced last month with The Force Awakens director J.J. Abrams. So it'll be interesting to see how they're mapping this out over the next 10 years, but it'll also be very interesting to see what directors will be utilised.
Yeah, I certainly expect them to go for more experienced directors with a proven catalogue of films. I'm very surprised Steven Spielberg's not directed a Star Wars film yet. I know he's shown an interest in it in the past. So
yeah, I think there was certainly back in 1982 when they were making Return of the Jedi, Steven Spielberg was George Lucas's #1 choice, and it was something to do with the Directors Guild, and there was some kind of conflict. I can't really remember what it was, but they couldn't use Steven Spielberg. He was desperate to get his hands on doing one of the episodic saga films at that point, and certainly at that point that was the concluding part of the trilogy as we knew. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see him, whether or not it be an anthology film or a saga film, but Spielberg's involvement would certainly be exciting. Yeah, I mean, that's all we've got on the Star Wars news for this week. I'm certainly, as far as TV spots go, with the Last Jedi, I'm pretty sure there'll be other themes going on, just like they did a couple of years ago with The Force Awakens. This is now the part of the show where we like to dedicate a section of the show to an actor or a producer. This week we are going to speak about the legendary Gene Wilder.
Yeah, one of my all-time favourite actors, a great man, a great performer. I first saw him in Stir Crazy, an utterly fantastic film from 1980 directed by Sidney Poitier. That was my first brush with him, but I think we do like to go through from the beginning of the career to the end, so I may touch upon, you've obviously seen the producers, have you seen anything prior to the producers?
Well, prior to the producers, there was nothing really that stood out to me. My first exposure to the great man was obviously Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971 I think that was released. I did see the producers, as you said, John, but that was probably about 10 years ago. I think it was a scene where he was talking about his blanket or something like that that really drew me to it, and I said, I need to see this film. But, I mean, his career started in the early 60s and right up to about 1967 prior to the producers, starring as Leo Bloom. It was mostly TV series and TV movies that he did. I don't really want to touch more on that because I've not seen any of it, John. I don't know if you've seen any of the early stuff from Gene Wilder, but certainly 1967 was the turning point for him.
Yeah, my earliest foray back into the Wilder filmography was the producers. Watched it as recently as last night, actually. Utterly brilliant film. A Mel Brooks film, of course. Wilder is his usual mental self, as you touched upon with the blanket. Had a breakdown with Max Bialystock early in the film, but he's really trying to force him into committing fraud, and he has a bit of a mental breakdown. He gets slapped, he gets soaked. It's just that nothing epitomises Wilder's eccentricity more than that. And of course you then have Kenneth Mars as Franz Liebkind coming into that film with the whole script and stuff like that, and with the whole springtime and with Hitler in Germany show that they try to make a flop. It's a great film, brilliant story, lots of laughs. And moving on from that, actually, again, I've been doing a little bit of a binge on Wilder because I knew we were going to be discussing him. I actually watched probably a lesser known one from 1970 called Start the Revolution Without Me. Again, incredible performance from Wilder. He stars alongside Donald Sutherland. It's set in the French Revolution. It's supposedly telling a part of history which has never been told, and it's very much in the vein of a Monty Python film. Very intelligent, wacky comedy, and he plays a dual role as one as a pauper and one as a aristocrat, and it's a brilliant film. I highly urge you to watch it if you've not seen it. Of course, if you don't like Monty Python, perhaps give it a miss because it is very much in the vein, and that's quite a distinct taste for a film. As he says, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, again another incredible film, an iconic role, a film that's been passed down the generations really, and visually for its time utterly amazing. A musical, of course, not one of my all-time favourite genres, and Wilder's really the main reason for my enjoyment of that film, alongside the infamous Oompa Loompas as well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, his portrayal of Willy Wonka might not have met the approval of the writer, Roald Dahl. Certainly, his portrayal to me was very sinister, very funny, very unassuming and very unpredictable. I did read a little piece of information on his input in the film, where he wanted the character of Willy Wonka to appear decrepit and disfigured and old, and then, as we know, anyone that saw the film, he does that little forward roll, and it really does say a lot about the man, that the reason that he wanted that in the film was so that the audience wouldn't know which way he was going to turn next.
And after that, I think, I don't know if you've seen perhaps The Scarecrow or Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But We Were Afraid to Ask. I certainly haven't. But
before my time.
Yeah, my next foray into Wilder's work was Blazing Saddles, again, a Mel Brooks directed film. I've seen this film dozens of times. I never tire of watching it. Gene Olsley plays Jim the Wacko Kid, a fallen shooter cowboy, for want of a better phrase, very much a drunkard by the time we meet him, and it's just a brilliant, brilliant film.
Yeah, I mean, the film itself, I've not seen it in a while now, but one thing getting into this film is it's not a Gene Wilder film. He certainly plays a big role in it, plays a memorable role in it, but it says a lot about the cast and the direction as well. You know, very funny film. I don't know if you would get away with making that type of film nowadays, but his role in that, very unassuming, and as I said, it wasn't exactly a Gene Wilder film, but his portrayal in the film was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Cleveland Little, who played the lead Bart, definitely had a big part to play in that film, being fantastic. It was a very, very funny film. There was lots of characters in it, such as Hedley Lamar, played by Harvey Korman, and obviously Burton Gilliam, who made a little appearance in Back to the Future 3. He is, of course, involved in the opening 10 minutes, which is up there with anything for me on film. It's just a brilliant film, and again, if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. But moving on, again, to another iconic film of mine. Again, I've seen this dozens of times. Young Frankenstein, once again, I believe a Mel Brooks film. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. This role seemed to be made for Gene Wilder as Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, as he liked to call himself.
He said it was Frankenstein.
Yeah, well, they were wrong then, weren't they? But no, I mean, it's one of those films that you can go back to, every year, and it's just as funny as the first time you saw it. My dad actually introduced me to the film itself, and although the character that Gene Wilder plays is absolutely brilliant, there was some stealing scenes from Marty Feldman as well, John.
Yeah, Marty Feldman utterly amazing in this film as Igor. Of course, those crazy eyes. And listen, I'm not slagging the man. I actually have Graves' disease as well. I've not got popping eyes yet, but I've got it, so I can certainly sympathise with him. Utterly amazing film, as we said. Peter Boyle as the monster, just incredible cast, brilliant. Boyle, yeah. Obviously the classic putting on the Ritz and various other scenes, and I could talk about it for hours and hours alone because it's such a great film. But
yeah, I mean the role of Dr. Frederick Frankenstein in this film, as I said, was clearly made for Gene Wilder, and Mel Brooks worked with him previously. It's just one of those films, when you think of Gene Wilder, you do think of that film and vice versa. Very memorable film, very memorable character, and yeah,
I mean, certainly when I think of Gene Wilder, the first films that pop into my mind are Young Frankenstein, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and Stir Crazy. Young Frankenstein, one of my favourite films of all time, really. And of course, moving on to 1976, you've got the equally brilliant release of Silver Streak, where he, of course, finds himself on a long distance train, having a romantic time with Jill Clayburgh's Hilly, ending up going black in the train station toilet, which has to be seen to be believed because it is utterly hilarious, and becoming embroiled in an on-off fight with a group of gangsters after he thinks he sees a man getting thrown off a train. Utterly brilliant film again from the man.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first film that Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor appear in. They would obviously go on to appear in a few more films together. Again, it's just one of those films, as you said, John, you think of Gene Wilder, it's one of the films that you automatically think of. My dad introduced me to this film when it first came out. He's got very much the same sort of humour as myself, you know, and taste in films. And this certainly was a standout performance by Gene Wilder.
Yeah, one of the most memorable things with Silver Streak was Gene Wilder's character continually getting thrown off the train and then miraculously appearing back on it again, much to the bemusement and amazement of the villainous characters in the film. Utterly brilliant film, as I said, and again, if you've not seen it, much like most of Gene Wilder's filmography, I certainly urge you to watch it. Moving on from that was the 1979 release, The Frisco Kid, another one I've watched just recently. He plays a Polish rabbi by the name of Avram, starring alongside Harrison Ford's Tommy, who is a cowboy come train robber. This is a fantastic performance from Gene Wilder. Very sad and touching performance in parts and incredibly funny in other parts. He goes through a bit of a journey himself, starting off a little bit naive, and by the end he's very much matured mentally as a person and developed a great relationship with Tommy, Harrison Ford's character. Certainly a budding romance between those two throughout the film, and a fantastic film, The Frisco Kid.
Yeah, and moving on to 1980s Stir Crazy, Gene Wilder starring as Skip Donahue. This was the second film, John, that he appeared with Richard Pryor.
That's correct, yeah, and again, one of my all-time, I think I've done a written review on this, one of my all-time favourite comedy films, not just a Gene Wilder film, comedy film in general. Utterly brilliant film. Starts off exactly the way you'd want a film to start off, with Richard Pryor's character getting half of his guests that he's waitering for high on marijuana. Not much to his displeasure, might add, because he didn't want them to get high. It was accidentally put in with the salad. But yeah, what a start to the film, and going forward it just gets better and better and better. An iconic role for Gene Wilder again is Skip Donahue. Their shenanigans in the prison are just legendary. And again, if you've not seen it, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I think a lot of that was possibly unscripted as well, certainly on Richard Pryor's part. But you know, this is the thing I like about Gene Wilder as an actor, the calmness of him, and how quickly he can crack. It's just phenomenal to watch. It's certainly polar opposites, you know, with the way he portrays a character and the way he can switch from being a very calm, collective person to, you know, an absolute maniac.
Yeah, that's prominent in quite a lot of his films, as we touched upon with the producers. Obviously Silver Streak, when he loses the plot after getting thrown off the train for about the 5th time. Yeah. And then Stir Crazy, certainly the early scenes in the prison, where he has a complete mental breakdown and starts riding one of the guards like he's a horse. That scene in particular is just legendary stuff. As is the earlier scene that precedes it, where him and Harry lose the plot when they find out they're getting 125 years. I can't tell you how much I've laughed at that in the past. Also, moving on, you've got the scene with the rodeo, where the guard and the warden in the prison are trying to break him and make him run in the prison championship, where he goes through a series of trials and tribulations, ending with what they thought was going to be the definitive point of him breaking, with him sharing a cell with Grossberger and Richard Pryor's character Harry Monroe. The fact that he's actually slapping Grossberger's hand in the morning, the utter dismay of a prison guard, is just classic Wilder in one scene.
I mean, it was an excellent cast as well. You know, one of the other characters out with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor's Skip and Harry was the character George Sanford Brown, who buddied up with Harry Monroe for most of the prison scenes, which was hilarious. Yeah. And you've got Sweet Pants. Yeah, Sweet Pants. Yeah, Craig T. Nelson in there as well. You know, it was a great cast. You know, and Barry Corbin's portrayal was Warden Walter Beatty, I think it was, John.
Yeah, that's right.
A great cast.
And an early appearance from Jonathan Banks as Jack Graham, obviously played quite a prominent role in Breaking Bad for a number of seasons. So utterly brilliant cast, brilliant story, one of his best films in my opinion. And as I said, the first one I actually saw with Gene Wilder in it, and what a way to start with a Gene Wilder film with him next to Pryor.
I think a lot of people don't realise that you know, Sidney Poitier was the director of this film, which is, you know, it took me by surprise when I, you know, realised who the director was, you know. Yeah,
I didn't know that until recently. It certainly took me by surprise. As a big fan of In the Heat of the Night, I'm certainly familiar with Sidney Poitier, so that surprised me. I didn't know he even directed, so I'm quite ashamed with that, but yeah. And moving on, I think from that there's obviously the 1984 release, The Woman in Red, where He both directed and starred in it, alongside Kelly LeBrock.
Yeah, I mean, this was a different sort of direction Gene Wilder took with this film, John. More of a romantic comedy. It's one of those films that I remember at the time when it was out. I think it was mid-80s. It was out 1984-85, I'm not sure. Kelly LeBrock played Charlotte, but also it was Charles Grodin, who also appeared in one of my favourite films, So I Married an Axe Murderer. A decent cast in that as well. You know, it was a decent attempt of a rom-com, if you like, but it was certainly a different direction for the actor at that stage in his career.
Yeah, and obviously moving on from that, he's once again co-starring next to Richard Pryor in the magnificent See No Evil, Hear No Evil from 1989, the year of my birth. These two together are just magic, apart from that last film, which we'll be discussing shortly. The first half of this film, in my opinion, is absolute gold, with the two of them really having to use both senses. One can't see, one can't hear, and they're basically having to combine into one person to really survive after they witness a murder.
Yeah, I mean, and the most memorable part of the film is really in the first half, and in particular in the police station, where something as simple as getting their mugshots taken just turns into one of the most memorable, funniest scenes I've seen in any comedy film to date. But it's one of those films that starts off well. It's a really funny film, probably the first hour or so, and then it kind of turns into a kind of action crime comedy. Certainly the pacing of the film slightly different to the first half of the film, but you know, it's certainly still a great film.
Yeah, with that coming to the end of the 80s, I've just made a startling observation looking through his filmography on IMDb that he really didn't do a lot of films in the 80s. When you look at it, he'd done two in 1980. After that, there was only really maybe another 4 or 5 films that he'd actually done, and this really signified a dip in his career that he never really managed to recover from. Certainly getting into the 90s, it was more TV movie heavy. His career was almost symmetrical in that he started with TV movies, as you said earlier on, went into bigger hits, really iconic, memorable films, and then he started to take a real dip round about the mid-1980s. Of course, Hear No Evil was towards the late 80s and a bit better, but really went downward for him again into the 90s.
Yeah, the last film he did with Pryor was obviously the 1991's Another You, where he played George. Now, the synopsis of the film: George has been in a mental hospital for 3 years and is finally ready to get out into the real world again. Eddie Dash, who is Richard Pryor, a dedicated conman, is supposed to keep him out of trouble, but when he begins to recognise George as a missing millionaire, he wants to take advantage of the situation. The actual description of that film sounds actually quite funny, but for some reason it doesn't work. It's quite sad in a way that, you know, this would be their last film together. It probably would have been best just ending it on See No Evil, Hear No Evil, especially with that film. You could sense the dip in the comedic value, and they probably should have ended it there. But you're right, John. I mean, his career at that point certainly did start to go back to the TV series and the TV movies and stuff like that. But just touching on the person himself, you know, Gene Wilder, I saw him in so many interviews over the years, more so in his later years, and there was one thing that he always said in his interviews was that he didn't regard himself as a funny man, which, you know, I can understand where he's coming from. The person who we obviously didn't know, but he came across as a very subdued, quiet man, very different to his performances on the silver screen. Admittedly, as much as we would like to think that him and Richard Pryor were very good friends, off screen they weren't. They had their own crowds that they hang about in. Richard Pryor was certainly a different kettle of fish, and his lifestyle was certainly different to Gene Wilder's.
Yeah, that was something that always took me by surprise when I read that the two never really socialised out with the films. I mean, you look at their on-screen chemistry, you would think these two guys are the best of friends. They were a match made in heaven in cinematic terms. But yeah, as you says, never really socialised. Gene Wilder, I think, says they weren't very close at all. But yeah, I have to agree with you. As I said at the beginning, he just comes across as a great man, both on the screen and off the screen. Completely different to the man we see on the screen, who's at times very eccentric and boisterous and out there. Off screen, quieter, but just a great man in general. One of my favourite actors of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he died last year in August 2016, and I was very saddened when I heard about his passing. He's certainly one of the actors that I was such an admirer of throughout my life. I was born in 1976, so he did a few films before I was born, and then I kind of grew up around the ones that he did do. Yeah, I mean, he will be missed.
Well, everybody, this is the part of the show where we like to do a review on a film which has piqued our interest. I obviously touched upon the film briefly earlier in our profile of Gene Wilder, and we're going to continue that theme into this part of the show with a more in-depth review of the Robert Aldrich released Frisco Kid. It's a western comedy, two genres that I personally love, and two genres that don't combine regularly enough for my liking. The two main stars are Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford, as I touched upon earlier. The latter was obviously in the midst of early Star Wars fandom, whilst Wilder was very much at the peak of his powers at this juncture in his career. The story is quite simple. Avram Belinsky, played by Wilder, is sent from Poland to be the new rabbi at the San Francisco synagogue. He's not the brightest spark, having graduated bottom of his class in religious studies, and at the beginning at least is extremely naive and trusting. Hence why when he arrives in Philadelphia, he's soon beaten and left penniless at the hands of three roguish brothers. The one thing Avram has been blessed with, though, is sheer determination and a stubbornness that would make any mule blush. He regains his strength with the help of an Amish settlement and makes his way west on a train thanks to their kindly generosity. There's an early brush with Harrison Ford's Tommy Lillard here, with him robbing the train as Avram uses the toilet. Upon reaching the end of the line, he finds work on the tracks and saves enough cash up to acquire a horse and continue his journey to the west coast. This is really when the real story begins to develop. He once again crosses paths with Tommy. After spending a night together and displaying his hopelessness for direction, the latter agrees to take him to the west coast personally. What follows is an utterly hilarious journey of mishaps and all the antics you'd expect in a Wilder film. The best examples being his refusal to ride on a Sunday for religious reasons, even when being chased by a group of hangmen baying for blood, or when he rides back to get a tour of school he left in the midst of Native Americans trying to murder the pair. Wilder's fantastic here, and in a way this character is different from anything I've seen him try to tackle in the past. Sure, Avram is prone to all the hilarity and misfortune that plagues many of his prior characters, but there's a genuine sincerity and kindness within the man, and a certain amount of magnetism that pulls him out of a hole multiple times, which really sets this character apart from the others, in my opinion. Ford is also impressive as Tommy. He follows very much in a similar vein to Han Solo, in that he begins as a mysterious robber with a hint of callousness, but slowly transforms into a good man as his bromance and friendship with Avram grows. Their relationship felt genuine, and the chemistry between the two actors was pretty good for the most part. Without spoiling the ending too much, some gratifying retribution dished out in an action-packed finale. Having not seen this film until last week, I have to say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. The story was enjoyable, the performances of the leading two were great, there was laughs and moments of sincerity, and it was well paced throughout. If you're a fan of Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford, then this is an unmissable film and you won't be disappointed. If you aren't, who isn't, then maybe it's best giving it a miss. But there's certainly enough meat on the bones to make it an enjoyable watch regardless. I highly recommend this film, and I'll be giving it a 4 out of 5.
So that was episode 4 there of the Movie Burner podcast by Movie Burner Entertainment. I'd like to thank you for listening to this latest episode, and just remember you can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners and on our official website movieburnerentertainment.org. Many thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.